Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. What could be worse than a dishonest manager at work? You're about to find out. If you're new here, please join our channel. Here we go. A year of mildly infuriating torture. I've been working for this company, 200 employees, 15 locations, for about 2 years. The first year I spent almost entirely at one site. The manager's desperation, always an emergency, inspired me to work my butt off to turn that first site around, and it really showed. That manager was a jerk to a lot of people, but was only ever grateful to my face. The owners took notice and sent me to a few of their other locations to help with various projects, and it's been a blast. There's been some really tough jobs, but it's the most stress-free and rewarding environment I've ever worked in. One thing though, for some effing reason, each week my time card would bend in a crucial spot, which made it a pain in the butt to get it to correctly fit into the time clock. I know it sounds petty, but for the whole first year it drove me insane because it had happened every week, for a year, and nobody else had this issue. I was obsessed with how gentle I was with it, and I'd watch anyone that went near it like a hawk. It went from mildly infuriating to me wanting to choke someone. Eventually, I'd investigated enough and narrowed it down to being 100% certain it was that store manager bending it on purpose because he thought it was hilarious. He was a jerk like that. Haha, fine, F you, I can take a joke, even if it went a year too far. I just started hiding my time cards, but when he went looking for them and finally found them a few weeks later, after a few weeks of buttery smooth clock ins and outs, he bent my time card for the last time. I was over it, and I confronted him, and he surprisingly lied. I'd never. I knew my next step was going to F him over monstrously because I did everything there. I called the district manager and told him I'd quit before stepping foot in that site again. I said it more gracefully than that, but that's the gist of our conversation. He tried his damnedest, even had the CFO drive 60 miles to try to twist my arm into going back, but I made it simple for them. I'll go to any site but that one. If that's a problem, I quit. They relented and I got my way, which I'm extremely grateful for, but that made that store the center of upper management's attention. They'd been up his butt since then, and people gossip, so over the span of 10 months, everyone found out that A, the store went back to crap when I left, B, he stole the store's petty cash, safe was empty, C, he could only keep habitual felons and drug addicts that wouldn't do anything in his employ because average folk won't take his abuse, D, would steal money out of the register and blame drug addicts, E, never had change because no petty cash. He was shorting customers regularly. He was with the company for 15 years, but he was fired 12 hours ago. It's a relief and feels like a victory, but it feels a bit sad too, like I dropped a nuke to try and end the prettiest war ever. I also stepped foot in that store for the first time since 2018. I hope that effort doesn't go postal. And our next story. My ex-advisor plagiarized my work, so I exposed her and that cost her job. The initial reason for the revenge happened in 2013, but the revenge only happened in 2017. I'll keep everything vague as not to be recognized. For context, back in 2013, I was a graduate student pursuing my master's degree. That was my last year in the program. We had 24 months to finish all the work and the dissertation. My advisor was a professor who was very well known and experienced in my field of work. Let's call her Janet, fake name. Janet and I had worked together with research since my college days as I became part of an undergraduate research with her. At that point, we'd been working for about 4 years, and as any advisor-student relationship, we more had our disagreements quite often. Janet was used to doing her experiments a certain archaic way. I knew there were better uses of our grant's money and always tried to push toward a more advanced method, especially correlating data collection and statistics. However, our relationship was always good. I knew her husband and had been to her house numerous times. She was a little set in her ways, but we managed to make good progress on our field. Anyhow, by the end of 2013, I presented my dissertation to the department and was approved with flying colors. My data still wasn't published in any paper as I wanted to have more analysis in different areas to make a more robust and better paper. With that said, my dissertation was published, and by all reasons, that is my work and my experiments. After I got my MS, I decided to pursue a PhD. While I was still going to work in the same field, I wanted to use different techniques and thus talked with Janet about going to pursue a PhD under a different professor in another university. She always encouraged me to do better and look for ways to diversify my views. I went ahead and contacted a professor outside my country in another university to pursue my PhD. I got approved and soon moved away. For the next 2 years, I still kept in contact with Janet, but on the third, she stopped responding. Initially, I thought she'd changed her email or something, but didn't think much of it. Time flew by, and in 2017, while reading papers and writing my own, I came across a paper that was strangely similar with my research. Interested in it, I opened it up to read. For my shock, it was a paper by my ex-advisor. She was up as advisor and another guy who, from his curriculum, is her current master's student. Reading the title, I thought, hey, that's neat. She continued researching it. Boy, was I wrong. Reading the paper, I got increasingly angry. That wasn't new research. It was my research. My data was all in that paper, even my graphs and tables. Initially, I thought, oh well, she's also an author, and if she's citing it, there shouldn't be any problem. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. My name was nowhere near that paper as they claimed that research as original. Now I was livid. I sent an email to Janet confronting her, which was never replied to. However, I'm not a pushover and will never allow people to claim my work as theirs. She made a mistake by using my data. I'm a researcher and I keep everything I ever worked on saved in an external SSD encrypted and on my own possession. All cataloged with date entries and even had my own dissertation to prove my work. In my country, research is financed by governmental grants. I wrote an email to the dean of the grants institution explaining the situation with proof of everything. I also sent an email to the journal in which it was published contesting their paper and explaining everything. It didn't take longer than 15 days for me to get a follow-up. The institution responsible for the grant was furious. They cut all financial aid for her and her student and made a formal requirement to the university requesting her immediate termination. The journal retracted the paper and is now suing her for plagiarism. Now, after all these years, I learned that she was indeed fired and hasn't been able to work in the field ever since. I never met her again and have no intention of ever doing so. Now my work is published and I'm recognized by my contributions in the field. Maybe that was a petty thing to do, but I couldn't allow people to get away with claiming my work as theirs. And our next story. Send you everything? Sure. A few years back, I was working recruitment in a relatively large engineering company. It was my very first job, so naturally I was doing the grunt work, which mainly revolved around two things. A, interviews, quite self-explanatory, arrangement, attending, taking notes, etc. B, initial shortlisting of applicants. The company's job openings were all posted on a centralized website where people could submit their applications and resumes. This shortlisting involved me going through every single application that we received for the 50-plus job openings we had and doing a basic screening so that only suitable applications would be forwarded to departments. Considering the number of job openings and the reputation of the company, we easily had over 100 applications coming in, daily. Therefore, necessitating a basic round of shortlisting to save the department's time filtering through irrelevant applicants. Simple but very time-consuming work. Fast forward to about a year after I joined. A new manager, W, comes in. It quickly becomes obvious that she's one of those managers who nitpicks everything their subordinates do and assumes that everyone around them isn't doing their job properly. Less than a week after she joins the company, W calls me into a small meeting room to discuss our work scopes. So I sit down with her and give a brief rundown of what my work entails. And already I can see the gears in her head turning. Through the whole conversation, she keeps making snide remarks and hinting that I'm not doing enough work. She clearly is of the opinion that my work is such chicken feed that it would take a half-wit 5 minutes to get it done. Finally, W stops beating around the bush and tells me, I noticed that some of the job openings have been advertised for very long. Uh-oh, I know where this is going. She continues, I want to close as many positions as quickly as possible. So from now on, send me all the applications that we get, and I'll do the filtering myself and send them to the bosses. At this point, I know that W has absolutely no idea just how many applications we receive each day, but when I try to explain this to her, she simply brushes off the idea that it'll be too much for her to manage. Fine then. Cue the MC. Starting that afternoon, I begin downloading every single new application that comes in and emailing them all to her. Bear in mind the sheer volume of applications exceeded the email size limit many times over, and I was forced to send her multiple emails packed with documents every day. As expected, they pile up quickly. W simply doesn't have time to go through 100 applicants a day. Within 2 days, I've received a good 5 emails asking for more applications, which I helpfully forward to W. Swamped, she starts to simply email out the unfiltered applications to the departments. By the second week, her email inbox is bursting, and she's fielding angry calls from multiple department heads wanting to know either where the new applications are or asking why they aren't being properly filtered beforehand. Meanwhile, with all the shortlisting taken off my hands, I've got loads of free time to sit at my desk and watch her flounder. Before the third week rolls around, W meekly approaches my desk and tells me that I've been doing a great job, and there's no need to send the applications directly to her anymore. Never heard the slightest insinuation that I wasn't pulling my weight from her after that. And our last short story for you. Don't damage my book. Several years ago, I went to return a library book to discover that a drink had spilled on it in my bag. The librarian handling returns sighed and said I'd have to take it to have the damage assessed. Of course, the result was I had to pay for the book. After an eternity of checking, queuing, and searching the system for a price, I paid £13, despite the RRP printed on the back being $8.99. She takes the book and is about to drop it in the returns bin with all the other normal returns when I say, "Hang on, I paid for it. That's my book now, right?" She shrugs and says, "Sure," but then starts to remove the Property of City Library sticker. As she pulls at it, the page starts to tear. "Whoa, don't damage my book now," I quip. She glared back at me as if I was really pushing it and continued to pull. In probably the only moment of my life, my brain worked fast enough and I came out with, "If you damage my book in any way, I'll have to charge you for that." She let out a squealing noise and stormed off into the back staff-only area. She then returned with her boss, who thrust the book in my hand and says, "Just take it and leave." Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.